before we even have our arms around the one big, beautiful bill that passed already, there's talk of a second big, beautiful bill. And Brandon Steinhauser is here. He's a political strategist. Seen him regularly on Fox News to talk about what's cooking in Congress. Brandon, thanks for joining us.
It's good to be with you guys. Good morning.
So tell me what is cooking up here. What do we got for another big, beautiful bill?
Yeah, well, I think first, you can look at what the president signed into law on July 4th. There was a lot there to work with and to build upon. We had making the tax cuts permanent, the tax cuts from 2017, no taxes on tips and overtime. There was border security support and funding for the wall and for hiring new ICE officers, reforms to student loans and to getting rid of some of the Green New Deal type subsidies, and a bunch of other good stuff in the bill. I think House Republicans, led by the Republican Study Committee, are looking at how can we build on that? How can we move that forward? And so I expect them to work on a couple of different issue buckets. I think making that tax relief on tips and overtime permanent is probably going to be in this next version. I think they're going to double down on border security, funding for the wall, finding ways to support our Border Patrol agents and our ICE officers who are frankly doing a thankless job and going around making the country safer for us. And hopefully they'll also work on some spending restraint and spending reform, because we have, as you guys well know, $36 trillion in debt. We've got to find a way out of that, and there's some hard choices that need to be made to do that.
Now, remind me on a reconciliation bill, is that the one they can only deal with policy, not actual spending? I mean, there were some reports from some that the one big beautiful bill was loaded up with pork, and I heard others say, well, there is no pork there. But is reconciliation bill just on policy, not on spending? And can you do that with 50 votes?
Well, I think that you can. Yeah, the bill is focused on policy, but if you change certain policies like Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, for example, it does have an impact on spending. And so in the first version of the One Big Beautiful Bill, there were some reforms to policy that led to some spending reductions on things like, again, green subsidies or the SNAP program or Medicaid and things like that. So if you change certain policies and who's eligible and you have work requirements and things like that, then it can lead to a reduction in overall spending.
And because it's a reconciliation bill, it does not require the 60 votes and not subject to the filibuster and everything else. It only takes a simple majority. Is that right?
That is correct.
Yeah, so that's where this Congress can get some things done. Back to the One Big Beautiful Bill that has passed and been signed into law on July 4th. What I saw that J.D. Vance was out in Ohio yesterday. He was talking about it. We see a little bit about it, but I don't think that we, even folks that dig into the weeds on this stuff, let alone the average American out there, have any idea the kind of impact this is going to have on their bottom line, or some things that have obviously President Trump talked a lot about them during the campaign. But do you think that more needs to be done to sell this bill, even though it's been passed, and help people understand what is all in it?
I do. I think that's a great point. I think, look, my background is in strategic communications and messaging as it relates to conservative issues and policy priorities. And if I've learned anything in my 20 years of doing this, you have to repeat the information again and again and again, whether you are an elected official, a candidate, part of the party leadership, or an outside group. You really have to continue to pound the message home about what's in the bill, what are the policies, how are they going to impact Main Street, regular Americans. And I think there's a lot of good stuff to talk about, but it takes discipline to basically continue to repeat that message. And I think what happens is elected officials get tired of saying the same thing. They get tired of the same questions from the press and sometimes from outsiders. And so I think, part of our job is to remind them, look, you've got to go do that. You've got to repeat it again and again until you are completely tired of saying it. And then you have to say it again. It's the only way to make the message resonate with folks who are living their lives, paying bills, taking care of their families. You have to repeat it again and again.
The regime media is having a bit of a field day related to the president's approval rating and those that approve and disapprove. And if we're to believe, AP or some of these other polls, you got Trump's approval at 40%. Is that an example of people not feeling? First of all, do you believe that with everything going on? By the way, the Democrats are like at 20 something. So it looks like people are just a little frustrated with government in general. But you believe the polling, and is that part of the need to sell this more?
It might be, but that is a pretty normal thing, especially for a president who's now in his second term. It's kind of a historic example. We haven't had a two-term president who served non-consecutive terms since Grover Cleveland. And so it's kind of a unique position. But look, Trump is ahead of where he was for much of his first term. I think he was pretty typically around 33 to 35% approval rating. So he's 5 or 6 or 7 points above that. He's obviously facing a media onslaught that is nonstop. They continue to try and change the subject and just attack from every angle. And so I think part of that is just, by virtue of kind of being in his position, again, being a second-term president. In some ways, you could argue that's a pretty strong position when you have not only the left, but you have the media lined up against him. But look, he's not up for re-election again. He is going to just continue to push policies and a message that he believes the American people support and voted him in to focus on. So whether we're talking about tax cuts or border security or other issues, I think you're going to see him double down on trying to get wins for not only the administration, but more importantly, for the American people.
S&P at record levels, NASDAQ at record levels, the stock market humming, a whole lot of tax policy, again, just weeks ago that was put in place. So this is going to take some time to get to the bottom line of Americans and see their 401k and their investment accounts doing well and talking to the tax man. And if you're in business and have that 100% depreciation in year one, some of this stuff just going to take time to sink in and actually get to the bottom line of the average American, isn't it?
It is, and I fully believe that if we continue to pursue policies that are pro-growth, we could see an economic boom similar to the one we had in the first administration. I work a lot on AI policy, and there's another example of where the president was leading on that. He put out an action plan last week that looks pretty good. It's all about leading in AI, but also mitigating risks. There are a lot of potential downsides there. So trying to find the right balance there. If we get that right with his leadership, I think we could have tremendous impacts and reap the benefits of AI and advanced technology and have the United States continue to lead on that. There's a lot of potential wealth to be created. So I'm very excited about that. Again, I'm concerned about some of the potential downsides economically and from a national security standpoint, but I know that he and his team are working hard to deliver on that. And I think there's other opportunities like that where he sees America as ready to lead and willing to lead. Another one is energy. And I think that we have a lot of opportunity there to continue to unleash American energy because that's going to be critical in the next few years and the decades to come.
Yeah, and you've got our former governor, now Secretary of Interior, leading this National Energy Council. Just like there's a National Security Council, there's now a National Energy Council. They declared a national energy emergency. They are pulling out the stops on opening up federal lands to development. So, some news yesterday about some areas that previously had been off limits because the Biden administration obviously was taking things on. So a lot of good to be coming from that. And that's another example where, you don't make those policy changes and instantly have the impact. So that's great. You mentioned the downside of AI economically. What do you mean by that, Brandon?
Well, there's a lot of concern out there that AI will replace potentially half of entry-level white-collar jobs in the next few years. So we need to make sure that, if that happens, American workers are protected and that there is an effort to make sure that wealth that is created is fairly distributed, if you will, that people benefit from that. And so that's a concern. But there's also other things. There was an Atlantic piece just a few days ago about ChatGPT providing some really scary encouragement and advice to people, encouraging them to commit self-harm and to practice. I'm not making this up. Your listeners can go look this up. But it was telling them all sorts of things that were quite evil, actually, and things like worshiping the devil and all these other occultic practices. So really scary, weird stuff that people have to be very concerned with. And so I think we have to make sure that we align AI to human values and And again, not just big tech left-wing values, but to American values of liberty and life and prosperity and goodness. And so there are definitely some concerns there, but I think the president is trying to strike that balance. He's trying to make sure that America leads on AI, but we also put in some safeguards to prevent the worst risks and potential for social harm there.
All right, interesting update on a few fronts there. Political strategist Brandon Steinhauser, Steinhauser Strategies partner, and also the CEO of the Alliance for Secure AI. So good wealth of information there. We're going to watch close for that Republican Study Committee to come out with that second one big beautiful bill. Keep this great policy going. Brandon, thank you for the time.